The problem wasn't the quantum mechanics. The problem was that my understanding of quantum mechanics was directly tied to the proximity of Alex Carter. For 2 hours every Tuesday and Thursday, crammed into a sterile study cubicle in the campus library, the universe made a fragile, fleeting kind of sense. Then the session would end. Alex would pack up his worn leather satchel, clap me on the shoulder with a familiar warmth that I both craved and dreaded, and the elegant certainty of wave-particle duality would collapse back into incomprehensible chaos. I was going to fail. Worse, I was going to have to stop seeing my tutor. I was staring at a particularly vicious Schrödinger equation when he cleared his throat. I looked up from my textbook, my brain feeling like a scrambled egg. Alex was leaning back in his chair, arms crossed over a plain gray t-shirt that did unfair things for his shoulders. He had this look on his face, a thoughtful, calculating expression I'd seen him use before he dismantled a complex problem into bite-sized, manageable pieces. Except this time, it was directed at me. "You're not getting it, are you?" he said. It wasn't an accusation, just a statement of fact. His voice was a low, calm rumble that always seemed to cut through my anxiety. "Is it that obvious?" I mumbled, pushing a hand through my hair. "You've been staring at the same page for 15 minutes, Liam. You're highlighting the publisher's copyright info." I glanced down. He was right. A thick yellow line bleed through the publication date. A hot flush of embarrassment crawled up my neck. This was my life now, a state of perpetual, low-grade panic, punctuated by moments of acute humiliation, all of it orbiting a man who probably thought of me as just another struggling student on his schedule. A man I was hopelessly, silently, and ridiculously in love with. "The final is in 10 days, he continued, leaning forward and resting his forearms on the table. The motion brought the scent of his cologne, something clean and sharp, like sandalwood and fresh laundry, across the small space between us. My focus, already tenuous, completely disintegrated. Cramming here, with all the distractions, isn't going to cut it. We need a full immersion weekend. No phones, no parties, just you, me, and the Copenhagen interpretation." My heart did a stupid little flip. A whole weekend? Where? My family has a small cabin up near Bear Lake. It's quiet. No cell service, spotty Wi-Fi at best. Perfect for this. He watched me, his gaze steady, perceptive. It always felt like he could see straight through my carefully constructed walls of academic stress and social awkwardness. "It's got 2 bedrooms, so you won't have to listen to me snore. What do you say? My treat. I want to see you pass this thing. An entire weekend. Alone with Alex. In a cabin." My mind, which couldn't grasp the concept of a quantum superposition, had no trouble at all generating 1,000 scenarios, each more terrifying and wonderful than the last. It was a terrible idea. It was the only thing in the world I wanted. "Okay," I heard myself say, the word feeling thin and distant. "Yeah, okay." A slow smile spread across his face. It was one of his real smiles, not the polite, encouraging one he used for tutoring. This one reached his eyes, crinkling the corners. "Good. Pack for the cold. We'll leave Friday after your last class." And just like that, the catalyst was introduced. My quiet, lonely existence was about to be put into a closed system with Alex Carter, and I had a sinking feeling that observing the outcome was going to fundamentally change it. The drive up was a blur of pine trees and my own frantic internal monologue. Alex drove his beat-up Jeep with a casual, one-handed confidence, the other arm resting on the open window. He controlled the music, a mix of indie folk and classic rock that was somehow exactly what you'd expect, and also a complete surprise. We talked, but it was easy, surface-level stuff about professors and terrible campus food. All the while, I was acutely aware of the small space between us, of the way his knuckles brushed my knee when he shifted gears, a touch so fleeting it was probably accidental, but it sent a spark straight up my spine. The cabin was exactly as he'd described it, small, rustic, and nestled so deep in the woods it felt like we'd driven back in time. It was made of dark, weathered logs and smelled of cedar and wood smoke and something else, something that was just Alex. He unlocked the heavy wooden door and pushed it open, stepping aside to let me in first. "Welcome to the Hermitage," he said with a grin. I stepped inside, my duffel bag feeling clumsy and oversized in my hand. The main room was dominated by a large stone fireplace, with a couple of comfortable-looking armchairs and a lumpy sofa arranged in front of it. A small, functional kitchen was tucked into one corner, and a narrow hallway led off to what I assumed were the bedrooms. It was cozy and lived in. There were framed photos on the mantelpiece, a younger Alex with a fishing pole, a family portrait where he looked about 16 and deeply uncomfortable in a collared shirt. It felt intimate, like I was being allowed into a private corner of his life I had no right to see. He dropped his own bag by the door and stretched, his shirt riding up to reveal a tantalizing strip of skin above the waistband of his jeans. I quickly looked away, my cheeks heating up, and busied myself with setting my bag down as if it were the most important task in the world. "Right," he said, "all business again. Let's dump our stuff and then hit the books. Your room is the one on the left. I'll start a fire." I nodded and escaped down the hallway. The room was simple, a single bed with a patchwork quilt, a small wooden desk, and a window looking out into the dense forest. It was cold, noticeably colder than the main room. I dropped my bag and stood there for a moment, just breathing. The air was still and quiet. I could hear the floorboards in the other room creaking under Alex's weight, the soft whoosh as he probably opened the flue for the chimney. It was just us. My heart picked up its pace. For the next few hours, we worked. We sat at the heavy wooden dining table, our textbooks and notes spread between us. And just as I'd suspected, my ability to observe him far outstripped my ability to absorb information about quantum entanglement. I watched the way he chewed on the end of his pen when he was thinking, the way a stray lock of dark hair fell across his forehead. I watched the muscles in his forearm flex as he wrote out an equation, his handwriting a surprisingly neat and elegant script. He was an excellent teacher. He was patient, breaking things down with analogies that were often silly but surprisingly effective. He never made me feel stupid, even when I asked the same question for the third time. Every so often, his hand would brush mine as we both reached for the same reference sheet, and each time my entire nervous system would light up like a switchboard. I would pull my hand back too quickly, mumbling an apology. He never seemed to notice. Or if he did, he never let on. My mind was a constant, churning dialogue of self-doubt. He's just being nice. He's a good tutor. That's why he's here. He said it was a 2-bedroom cabin for a reason. He's straight. Stop this. But then he would look up from the book, catch my eye, and offer one of those small, genuine smiles, and the careful arguments I constructed would crumble into dust. How could a simple smile feel so loaded? How could a person be so effortlessly magnetic? Around 7, my stomach grumbled, a loud, obnoxious sound in the quiet room. Alex looked up, an amused glint in his eyes. "Hungry. Starving," I admitted. "Me too. I think there's some pasta and sauce. You mind if we take a break? Please." The kitchen was tiny, a space clearly designed for one person at a time. We kept bumping into each other, shoulders brushing as I reached for a pot in the cupboard behind him, hips bumping as he moved past me to get to the sink. Each touch was electric, a tiny shock that left a phantom warmth on my skin. I was so wound up, so hyper-aware of his physical presence, that I nearly dropped the box of spaghetti. His hand shot out and steadied mine, his fingers wrapping around my wrist. "Whoa, careful." His touch was firm and warm. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. I was looking at his hand on my wrist, the way his long fingers dwarfed my own. He didn't let go immediately. The pause stretched, thick and heavy, filled with the sound of the water boiling on the stove and the frantic thumping of my own heart. It was probably only a second or two, but it felt like an eternity. Then he let go, turning back to the stove as if nothing had happened. "You drain, I'll get the plates." But something had happened. It was a change in pressure, a shift in the air. That touch hadn't felt accidental. It felt deliberate, meaningful. Or maybe I was just projecting my own desperate yearning onto an innocent gesture. My brain was an unreliable narrator, and my heart was a willing accomplice to its fiction. We ate sitting in the armchairs in front of the fire he'd built, the plates balanced on our laps. The crackle of the logs filled the comfortable silence. The pasta was simple, but it was one of the best meals I'd ever had. The firelight danced across his face, casting shifting shadows that highlighted the sharp line of his jaw and the intensity in his dark eyes. He wasn't looking at me. His gaze was fixed on the flames, a thoughtful, almost melancholy expression on his face. The confident, brilliant tutor had been replaced by someone quieter, more contemplative. "What do you actually want to do after all this, Liam?" he asked, his voice soft, almost blending with the sound of the fire. "After you pass physics and get your degree, what's the real plan?" The question caught me off guard. No one ever asked me that. The conversation was always about the next assignment, the next exam. My future felt like a distant, abstract concept, a problem set I hadn't figured out how to solve yet. "I don't know," I said, and the honesty of it surprised me. "I guess I've been so focused on just getting through it, I haven't thought much about what comes after." He nodded slowly, still watching the fire. "I get that. My dad wants me to go to law school. He's got my whole life mapped out. Carter and son." He said the words with a distinct lack of enthusiasm. "Sometimes I think I'd rather just stay up here. Chop wood. Fix things. You know." He turned his head then and looked at me. In the flickering light, his usual confidence was gone, replaced by a raw vulnerability that stole the air from my lungs. It was a glimpse behind the curtain, a look at the Alex who wasn't a campus prodigy, but just a guy trying to figure things out. Just like me. "Yeah," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I know." We sat there in silence for a long time after that, but it was a different kind of silence. It wasn't empty. It was full of unspoken things, of a shared understanding that went deeper than any equation. For the first time, I felt like he wasn't just my tutor. He was my friend. And that, somehow, was even more terrifying, because it gave me something to lose. We studied for another hour, but the dynamic had shifted. The academic barrier between us had become porous. He'd lean in close to point something out, and I wouldn't flinch away. His arm would rest on the back of my chair, his fingers just inches from my neck, and I would just sit there, breathing in the scent of him, trying to focus on the words on the page. The tension in the room was a living thing, a low hum beneath the surface of our conversation. By 11, my eyes were burning and the words in the textbook had started to swim. I yawned, a huge, jaw-cracking affair I couldn't stifle. Alex chuckled. "All right, I think that's enough quantum theory for one night. Let's call it." He started gathering his notes into a neat pile. "You should probably turn in. It's freezing in that back room. You'll want to give the space heater some time to work." I stood up, my body stiff from sitting so long. "Right. Yeah, good idea." I headed for the hallway, my mind already rehearsing the awkward goodnight. I was halfway to my room when he called my name. "Liam." I stopped and turned. He was standing by the fireplace, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "That heater in your room," he said slowly, deliberately. "It's busted. Has been for years. I forgot to mention it." My brain stalled, trying to process this information. "Oh, you can crash in my room. It's a big bed. I don't mind. This is it. This is a moment." My internal monologue is screaming. He's offering. He's making a choice. What does it mean? Say something. Don't be weird. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice coming out strained. "I can just take the couch." "The couch is a medieval torture device," he said with a wry smile. "Trust me, it's fine." I don't bite. His smile softened. "Unless you want me to." The last part was said so quietly, with such a playful, teasing edge, that I wasn't sure I'd heard it right. But the look in his eyes, it was a direct challenge. A question. He was testing the waters, pushing the boundary we'd been dancing around all night. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. This was happening. This was real. I took a breath. Okay. His room was bigger than mine, dominated by a large queen-sized bed with a heavy duvet. The only light came from a small lamp on the nightstand, casting a warm, golden glow over everything. It smelled even more like him in here. He'd already changed into a pair of soft-looking gray sweatpants and an old, faded university t-shirt. I suddenly felt intensely self-conscious in my jeans and hoodie. I need to change," I stammered, gesturing vaguely towards my bag in the other room. "Go ahead," he said, already pulling back the duvet on one side of the bed. I practically fled, my hands shaking as I pulled a pair of flannel pajama pants and a t-shirt from my bag. I changed in the cold darkness of my assigned but unusable room, my mind racing. This couldn't be happening. The smart, confident, and, as far as I knew, aggressively straight Alex Carter had just invited me to share his bed. And he'd flirted with me, hadn't he? Or was I completely misreading everything, projecting my own desires onto his kindness? Was I about to make the biggest fool of myself in recorded history? When I returned, He was already in bed, lying on his side, propped up on an elbow, scrolling through something on his phone. He looked up as I entered, and the casual domesticity of the scene hit me like a physical blow. He looked right, lying there, waiting for me. I hesitated at the door. "It's okay," he said softly, putting his phone down on the nightstand. "Come on." I walked over to the other side of the bed and slid under the covers. The sheets were cool, but the space around him radiated a palpable warmth. The mattress was big, but not big enough. I was intensely aware of every inch of space between us, of the rise and fall of his chest as he breathed. I lay on my back, stiff as a board, staring up at the wood-paneled ceiling. The silence was deafening. It was heavier, more charged than any silence we'd shared before. I could hear the wind whispering through the pine trees outside, the distant hoot of an owl, the sound of my own blood rushing in my ears. "Can't sleep?" His voice, low and close in the darkness, made me jump. "Just thinking," I managed to say. "About the exam." "Not really." Another pause. I could feel him shift, turning onto his back as well. Now we were both staring at the ceiling, 2 feet of mattress separating us like a vast, uncrossable chasm. "Liam," he said, and there was a new tone in his voice. Serious. Intent. I didn't forget the heater was broken. My breath hitched. I turned my head, and he is already looking at me. His face is half in shadow, but I can see the earnestness in his eyes. The easygoing tutor is gone. This is someone else. This is Alex. "I booked this cabin for a reason," he continues, his voice a low murmur. "And it wasn't just to study quantum physics. My world tilts on its axis. All the little moments from the past few weeks, the lingering touches, the focused gazes I'd told myself were just my imagination, the way he always found an excuse to extend our sessions, they all snap into focus. It wasn't in my head. It was real. I am weightless, suspended in the space between disbelief and a terrifying, soaring hope. I can't find words. My throat is tight. All I can do is look at him, my heart pounding out a frantic, desperate rhythm. He sees the panic and confusion and hope warring on my face. A small, sad smile touches his lips. "I'm not good at this, Liam." At words. And then he moves. He pushes himself up, leaning over the space between us. He moves slowly, deliberately, giving me every opportunity to pull away, to say no, to stop him. One of his hands comes up to cup my jaw, his thumb stroking gently over my cheek. His touch is hesitant, questioning. It sets my skin on fire. I don't move. I don't breathe. I just watch him, my eyes locked on his. "This isn't just about the exam, is it?" he whispers, his face so close now I can feel the warmth of his breath. The question hangs in the air, the final variable in a long and complex equation. My silence is the answer. He must see it in my eyes, because he closes the remaining distance. His lips meet mine. It's not a hard, demanding kiss. It's soft. It's searching. It's a question and an answer all at once. For a dizzying second, my brain short-circuits. This is impossible. This isn't happening. Then his thumb brushes my cheek again, a grounding, real sensation, and the kiss deepens slightly. All the anxiety, the yearning, the years of feeling alone and invisible, it all just dissolves. It melts away into this one perfect, impossible moment. I kiss him back, a flood of relief so profound it feels like I can finally breathe after being underwater for a long, long time. It feels like I've come home. The kiss ends as gently as it began. He pulls back, just enough to look at me, his forehead resting against mine. His eyes are dark and serious in the dim light. "Okay," he asks, his voice rough with emotion. "Okay." I breathe out, the word feeling ridiculously inadequate. It was more than okay. It was everything. I woke to the pale gray light of dawn filtering through the window. For a moment, I was disoriented, unsure where I was. Then it all came rushing back. The cabin, the fire, the confession in the dark, the kiss. "Alex." My eyes snapped open. I was alone in the bed. A cold, sharp panic seized me. He was gone. He'd woken up, realized what he'd done, and fled. The shame was so immediate and overwhelming it was like a physical weight on my chest. I'd misread everything. He was just experimenting or drunk on firelight and isolation, and now, in the sober light of day, he regretted it. Of course he did. He was Alex Carter. He could have anyone. Why would he want me? I sat up, the cold air hitting my bare arms. The heavy duvet felt like a lead blanket. I swung my legs out of bed, my feet hitting the frigid wooden floor. I had to get out of here. I'd make some excuse. I felt sick. I had to get back for something. And I'd call a cab, an Uber. I'd walk if I had to. I just couldn't face him. I couldn't bear to see the pity or disgust in his eyes. My movements were frantic as I pulled on my jeans from the day before. I crept out of the bedroom, my heart thudding a sick, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I peered into the main room. He was there. He was standing in the kitchen, his back to me, pouring hot water into 2 mugs. He was still wearing the same sweatpants and t-shirt from last night. He hadn't run away. He was making coffee. He must have heard the floorboard creak, because he turned. His hair was a mess from sleep, and there were faint pillow creases on one side of his face. He looked at me, and his expression wasn't one of regret or disgust. It was hesitant, anxious. He looked just as scared as I felt. We just stood there for a long moment, the 20 feet of space between us feeling like a mile-wide canyon. The only sound was the drip of the coffee maker. Then, he picked up the 2 mugs and walked over to me. He held one out. I took it automatically, my cold fingers wrapping around the welcome warmth of the ceramic. "Morning," he said, his voice a little hoarse. "Morning," I replied, my own voice barely audible. I couldn't meet his eyes. I stared down into the dark liquid in my mug, as if it held the answers to the universe. He started, and then stopped. He took a deep breath. I didn't regret it. Last night, he said it quietly, but the words were firm, deliberate. "Just so you know." I looked up at him then. He was watching me, his gaze intense, searching my face for a reaction. The vulnerability I'd seen in him by the fire was back, tenfold. He was laying it all out there, waiting to see if I would pick it up or let it shatter on the floor. The knot of panic in my chest loosened, replaced by a fragile, fluttering warmth. He wasn't running. He was staying. "Me neither," I said, and the relief in his expression was so immediate and profound it was like watching the sun break through the clouds. He reached out, not with a grand gesture, but with a quiet, simple one. He took my free hand, his fingers lacing through mine. His hand was large and warm, and it enveloped mine completely. It was a gesture of reassurance, a promise. The trip back to campus was the complete opposite of the drive up. The silence wasn't tense or awkward. It was comfortable, companionable. We didn't talk about what happened, not in explicit terms. We didn't need to. It was there in the small gestures. The way his hand rested on my thigh as he drove, the way I didn't pull away. It was in the shared smiles, the easy conversation. It felt normal. It felt right. But as the familiar campus buildings came into view, a new kind of anxiety began to creep in. The cabin had been a bubble, a world apart. Now we were back in reality. A reality where he was the popular, brilliant tutor, and I was me. What was this? A one-time thing? A weekend fling fueled by academic pressure and isolation? The fear of losing this fragile, beautiful thing we just found was a cold knot in my stomach. We took the final exam on Wednesday. I walked into the lecture hall and saw him sitting a few rows ahead. He turned, and for a split second, our eyes met. He gave me a tiny, almost imperceptible nod, a secret acknowledgement. It was enough to calm the frantic beating of my heart. I sat down and focused. For the first time, the equations didn't look like an alien language. I could hear Alex's voice in my head, patiently explaining, guiding me through. I finished the exam feeling not just hopeful, but confident. Afterwards, I was packing my bag when a shadow fell over my desk. It was Alex. "Walk with me?" he asked, his expression neutral. Around us, students were chattering, complaining, making plans. We were back in the real world. We walked out of the building and into the crisp autumn air without a word. My anxiety returned, stronger than ever. This was it. This was the "let's just be friends" speech. He led me to a quiet bench overlooking the campus green. We sat down. He didn't look at me. He stared out at the students walking by. "So, that's over," he said finally. "Yeah," I said, my voice tight. "Thanks again for all your help. I couldn't have done it without you." He turned to me then, and his face was serious. "Liam, this wasn't just about the exam. I told you that. I know, but—" "No buts," he interrupted gently. "I meant it. All of it." He took a breath. "I've liked you for a while. Since last semester, probably. I just didn't know how to." I'm not good at this. He liked me. He'd liked me for months. The idea was so staggering, so completely outside the realm of what I had allowed myself to believe, that I could only stare at him. I'm pretty sure, he said with a small, self-deprecating smile, that I booked a 2-bedroom cabin and then deliberately broke the heater in one of them just to have an excuse to get you to share a bed with me. I think that qualifies as being interested. A laugh escaped me, a real, genuine laugh of pure relief. You broke the heater? The knob was already loose, he said, a playful glint returning to his eyes. I just helped it along. He reached over and took my hand, his fingers lacing with mine right there, in the middle of campus, in the bright light of day. He didn't seem to care who saw. So, he said, his voice dropping a little, becoming more intimate. How about we study for the next one at my actual apartment? The heating is excellent, and there's only one bed. The future, which had always seemed like a terrifying, unsolvable problem, suddenly felt simple. It felt bright. It felt like Alex's hand in mine. We didn't go to his apartment that day. We went to a small, crowded coffee shop off campus. We found a small table in the corner, and we sat there for hours, just talking. Not about physics, or exams, or our father's expectations. We talked about movies we liked, about dumb childhood memories, about nothing and everything. Our knees were pressed together under the table, a constant, grounding point of contact. I looked at him, laughing at some stupid joke I'd made, the afternoon light catching in his dark hair. The constant hum of anxiety that had been my companion for as long as I could remember was gone. In its place was a quiet, steady warmth. It was a feeling I hadn't even known I was missing. It was the feeling of being seen. I had spent so long observing him from a distance, analyzing every micro-expression, trying to decipher the unreadable. Now, sitting here with him, our hands loosely clasped on the table between our coffee cups, I realized I didn't have to decipher anything anymore. It was all right here. It was real, and it was just the beginning.